Hello. Once again, my name is Kwame Gonza, and I'm coming to you once again on this video that I was supposed to do. I was supposed to do this presentation last week, but due to unavoidable circumstances, I was not able to come through and do this. What we want to do today is to look at some of the literature that has been written in the past by our ancestors and contrast it. We are going to contrast this literature with the literature today to understand what is going on. Specifically, we want to contrast the prophecies of our ancestors. And I picked out about 3 books. I picked the book Africa Must Unite by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and I picked the book by C.L.R. James, and I picked another book by Walter Rodney. And these books, together with the Neocolonialism, the Last Stage of Imperialism by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, they will help me to analyze what is going on today. But then I'll compare these books with one book which was published last year, and it was written by a gentleman called Ray Dalio. That book is called Principles of Understanding How to Deal with the Changing World Order. Let me try to put up that book. Dealing Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order. Principles for Understanding how to deal with the changing world order. Okay. Yes, this is the book. It is called Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order. It is unfortunate that the title was beating me, but I have read this book, and I would encourage you, my people who are watching, also to go out and read this book. Now, this book was published, like I said, in 2011, and what this book speaks about, actually, today, it is the same things which our ancestors were saying 50 years ago, 100 years ago, okay, 60 years ago, 50 years ago, and 100 years ago. When you combine the literature of what Nkrumah has put in the book Africa Must Unite, and then what he has put in Neocolonialism, the Last Stage of Imperialism, and what also C.L.R. James has put in the book, The Black Jacobins. It is almost similar to what Ray Dalio has put in this book called Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order: Why Nations Succeed and Fail. Now, in this book, Ray Dalio is saying that there is signs that are showing the decline of the Western world. And he went back as far as 500 years ago to start analyzing the different empires, what led to their rise, and then what led to their falling down. He went as far as the Dutch Empire, because if you remember, the Dutch controlled, the world, at a certain period in time, before we had, briefly the Portuguese in there. And then after the Dutch, declined, then the British rose up, okay? After the British rising up also, they dominated the world, and they created the British Empire, which they said that the sun will never rise on the British, will never set. Okay, the British Empire rose, and then the sun would never set on the British Empire. So the British Empire dominated, and that is the empire that dominated. They even ruled, the United States, because you remember in 1776, the United States has to fight against Britain for it to get its own independence and practice its own way of life. And then we had also the Britain come to Africa and India to a certain level, they went also to the United States to dominate these areas and colonize them. That's why you see that Africa had to fight against them. And then we had, after the British Empire, then we had the United States Empire, the rise of the United States Empire, which empire consolidated its position and rose after the World War II. The United States rose and became a superpower in 1945. You remember that institutions, that the World Bank, the UN, they were instituted. All these institutions were the sign of the power of the United States, because the United States came to play a very important role in these institutions, even up to today. But behind the rise of these empires, there is certain aspects, there is certain events, events that have gone on. Okay, like for example, when an empire is rising, the case Ray Dalio makes is that when an empire is rising up, it puts a lot of concentration on science and technology, okay, education in general, quality education for that matter. The empire puts a lot of emphasis on a strong military, okay, and trade and domination of trade, okay. So when you see that an empire is putting emphasis on these, then you know that that empire is rising. And in the same way, when an empire is falling and is declining, that empire is bound to put less emphasis, okay, on these items like education, okay, quality education. It doesn't take care of its people. So, and because the education is where innovation comes from, research and innovation normally comes from education. You will see that the empire borrows a lot of money and produces less, okay? So that means it trades less, okay? So that means these are some of the signs that the empire is declining. And these are the things which Ray Dalio has been pointing to. And then the empire increases its investment in the military. The empire increases its investment in the military and it starts spending a lot of money, even borrowed money, onto the military. And this is what these are the observations of this book by Ray Dalio, The Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order. And when he looked around, Ray Dalio says that he saw all the signs of a declining empire, you know, evident with the United States. And this is not only because he hates the United States, he's a really, when you read the book, he's somebody who's really so passionate about the United States as a nation and loves the country. And he wishes that the country would pull back some of the policies which it is implementing. He wishes that some of the leaders would pull back on the policies they are implementing. They would rethink some of the policies which they are implementing and start financing certain sectors of the economy, certain parts of the economy of the nation, so that the nation can move in a different direction. For example, education and health. But unfortunately, they cannot. Okay, they will not. They cannot pull back. They cannot revise. They cannot rethink these sectors. And even though they will pick up a book like this and read it. So these are the signs of a declining empire. And then when we look at the side of China also, countries like China, because from his observations, he sees that China is the one which is developing. China is the one which is rising as an empire. And let me just pull back a little bit on the decline. The United States as a declining empire, Ray Dalio also he's helped by another book which I read, and that book was not about politics or empires or anything. The book was written by Amy Chua. That book is called The Triple Package. So this book, The Triple Package, in it, Amy Chua looks at the rise of certain groups in the United States, what led to their rise. There is certain characteristics, there is certain areas where they put emphasis on. For example, the importance of education and the studying of core field, the emphasis on core fields of education like engineering, like STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So those areas, those groups emphasized those areas, and then law, those areas which will determine the fate of the nation. So those groups, whenever they rose in the United States, you see that they put emphasis in that area. They put emphasis on that area of education. Okay, they put emphasis on that area of education. That when you look at the whites, for example, when they arrived from Britain and Europe and they reached the United States, they emphasized the entrepreneurship, but they also emphasized quality education. They emphasize the study of science, technology, okay, mathematics, okay. So STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So they emphasize innovation, and that is why you see that these people like Benjamin Franklin, they traveled to Britain to go and copy technology and bring it back. They brought back that technology to the United States, and then there was a lot of invention and innovation when the United States was rising, copying a lot of technology from Europe. From countries like Germany, you know, the automobile, you can see that things like that, things like those important technologies were not invented in the United States, but they copied them from Europe and they brought them to the United States. The loom, for doing clothes, you know, cotton loom. The engine was not invented in the United States, you know, auto, the one, you know, it was invented in Britain and Germany. That is where the engine came from. So the groups which rise, according to Amy Chua in her book, The Triple Package, they emphasize good education and hard work. Okay, and as of today, Amy Chua, who I'm saying has helped Ray Dalio to make his point well, they are not related, but this is just my opinion because I read both of the books. She made that case very well, that the United States, especially the white people from Europe, they have de-emphasized the study, since they are the ones who are dominant in that country, the United States. They have de-emphasized the study of science and technology. Now they are concentrating on social sciences. That is why you hear them talking a lot of things: human rights this, human rights this, social this, social that. So they are emphasizing this, and yet groups like the Africans, and especially she emphasized the Chinese, the Asians. When you look at people who are running, for example, Google, Microsoft, all of them, Indians, okay, Satya Nadella, you know, all those guys, they are Indians, so they are from Asia. And when you look at innovation, the startup companies that are coming up right now, most of them, they are being started by people from Asia, from China, okay. So this helps Ray Dalio to make his case, you know, very well, the case for education. And so Dalio becomes very precise in that area. And when you look at China also, China has emphasized as a country, China as a country, and both of them with India. Of course, India, the doctors, the majority of the doctors in the United States are Indians, if you look at it. So China has emphasized the study of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and it is producing more engineers than the United States. Okay, so these are some of the things which have led to the rise of the Chinese and China as a state. But China has been in this position before. What is important also, which the point that is important, which Ray Dalio makes, is that China has been in this position before. So if China has been in this position, then it is bound to come back. So for the Chinese, actually, it is more like a comeback. It is more like a comeback to a position where they have been before. The Chinese have been in this position before. So for them, it is just a comeback. It is a comeback for the Chinese to dominate the rest of the world and become the biggest economy. You know, if you look at trade now, the United States is importing more compared to what it is producing. China is producing more. It is investing more in technology, and its military also is rising rapidly. In the United States, the only thing that is rising is the military, and the military actually is a recipe for decline, further decline, because you are not investing in production, Okay, you are not investing in industry, you're not investing in education. All these are declining. Industry is declining in the United States. The economy is declining. You look at places like Detroit, all of them, they look like they are bombed up, like they are Iraq. Okay, there's been a lot of deindustrialization. It's because of misplaced priorities of the ruling class in the United States, and they have been going around the world causing wars and killing people, while at the same time saying things like freedom and stuff like that. What they are speaking is actually the opposite. What they are saying is the opposite of what they are doing. They are killing people, but at the same time, they are talking about freedom and justice and independence and democracy, all these things, these sweet things which are good for people to hear. So they use these to kill innocent people, to destroy nations around the world. So all these things are what Ray Dalio he's pointing to, he's talking about. And when you look at our ancestors, like Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who wrote Neocolonialism, The Last Stage of Imperialism, and numerous other books like Africa Must Unite. And then when you look at C.L.R. James, also his book, The Black Jacobins. In The Black Jacobins, actually what The Black Jacobins, C.L.R. James helped me to see is that there is certain events. When I combined his book together with Africa Must Unite of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, The Black Jacobins helped me to see the struggle for liberation by Africans from Haiti, especially starting from Haiti. And then I contrasted that with Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's book, Africa Must Unite, what happened. Because in that book, Nkrumah also tries to show us what happened in the Gold Coast during the struggle for independence starting in 1947, when he came back to the Gold Coast, up to 1957, when he achieved independence for the Gold Coast, and then he renamed it Ghana. So it was confusing me a little bit there whether to call it the Gold Coast or call it Ghana. So he achieved independence for the Gold Coast and he renamed it to Ghana. So Nkrumah chronicles what happened during that period. So in the book, The Black Jacobins, C.L.R. James shows you the struggle that happened in Haiti, which I consider the milestone. It was a major milestone for Africans world over, because it led to the abolition of slavery. And the abolition of slavery actually is what led to the start of the weakening of the imperialistic camp. Many people don't see it up to today because the imperialists are still have their hands all over the world. Like the United States has military bases all over the African continent, and its military bases are all over the world, more than 800 military bases. But these are also points of vulnerability when you look at them, because to sustain these military bases, you have to pay money for them. You have to print money, and they don't have money, or you have to borrow. The United States is even $30 trillion in debt. An economy of 24 trillion. They have been talking about debt, that China is burdening Africa with debt, but the biggest borrower from China is the United States itself. China holds the biggest debt of the United States. The United States is in debt to the tune of $30 trillion for an economy of 24 trillion dollars. The economy is 24 trillion, but the debt is 30 trillion. So when you look at the United States actually is in more debt, compared to African countries. So that narrative that China is burdening African countries with debt should be dispelled. It is a lie. It is a trick. It is a Western neo-colonial trick, which is hidden behind a bias. It is hidden behind a jealous because of the fact that Africa has been developing, as a result of selling more of its commodities to China on a more favorable note. I will come back to that with another video when I'm comparing the difference between Africa's trade and then with China, and then Africa's trade with the Western world, the United States and the whole European League, Neo-Colonial League combined. So when I'm coming to that, I'll compare that, and how Africa has benefited more with its interaction with China than it has benefited in the last 30 years, than it has benefited from its interaction with the Western world for the last 600 years of contact with the Western world. So now, those books, they point out the events that were happening during that period. Like in Black Jacobins, there was a contest between Britain in 1791. There was a contest between Britain and France, and this was a gap which our people saw, and they started struggling for independence. And then also after 1945, we had just come from World War II, and our people saw this as an opportunity because Britain, which was Britain and Europe, which was the major colonizer at that time, had been weakened. And also today, this from my observation, when I combined the literature of Africa Must Unite, the Black Jacobins, and neocolonialism, Nkrumah's neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism, I see that the events are the same, which are happening today. That this going into the war in Ukraine and poking Russia, it is also weakening the United States and Europe, because they are pouring their weapons into Ukraine to fight the war in Ukraine, and they are poking Russia, and in turn they want to poke China to fight with it. So they are getting weakened actually, but they don't see it, and they don't have money. They are poor. They don't have money to spend on these wars. That is why you see that they have run away. They ran away from Afghanistan because they don't have any more money to spend on that war. So they had to leave it, to the extent that they even stole from Afghanistan $7 billion. The United States and Europe, they stole from Afghanistan, the Afghani government and the Afghani people, $7 billion of money, and they have not given back that money up to date. So I think the world needs to come together to hold them accountable and ask them to give back the money to Afghanistan. That money belongs to the Afghani people. It doesn't belong to the United States. They seized that money. Like what you see, they have been seizing money, Russia's money, 300 billion. So they are stealing from everyone. They are just stealing from everywhere because they are weakened, they are poor, they don't have money, they don't have this money. That is why you see that they are fighting to death. They are trying to fight to death in Ukraine. Like they don't have anything. They are fighting like this is the end of the Western world, because actually it is, literally it is. They don't have money, they don't have anything. If you look at 2020, the economies of the Western world have been declining drastically. They have drastically been declining. So they are fighting for their life. They are fighting for the survival of the Western civilization. So this is what you see that is happening. So these events, when I compared to between Ray Dalio's book, Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order, and then Kwame Nkrumah's book, Africa Must Unite, and then another book by C.A.R. James called The Black Jacobins, and then another book by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah again called Neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism. Actually, this book, every youth should get it and write it, and read it, because this book is very relevant to today, what is happening, and it is one of the books which are going to help us in decolonizing Africa, in building a new Africa. This book is going to be very instrumental. And the Neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism, also is another important book which we have to read to understand how the West is now moving in the continent through its military bases, but majorly through its corporations, and how can we fight those corporations. That work is in the book called Neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism. And then for us to understand how we should fight this struggle, also we need to visit the book called Philosophical Consensus, the philosophy of decolonization. That is the book that will give us all the strategies we need, together with the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. All these books were written by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah around, some of them around the end of his life, so that he can equip us with enough tools, because he is someone who had dedicated his life to fighting colonialism and neocolonialism and liberating Africa. So he dedicated so much of his life that he knew everything that was going on, even though he was overthrown, because the power, the force, and the desperation of neocolonialism during that period was overwhelming. So he did not have enough support on the continent for him to be able to stand up to against this evil of colonialism and neocolonialism and the Western imperialism. So he has given us these books. Africa Must Unite. Every youth, every African youth has to pick up this book and read it. You can order for it. If you want some, you can send me a message. You can type in the comment section all over the continent, all over the continent of Africa. I can get you this book. I can get it to you if you want to read it, or I can send you an electronic copy for you to read. But it is better for you to buy it, from the man himself, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. These books are being distributed by his son, Abdul Nasser, Nkrumah Gamal, who lives in Egypt, who now controls Nkrumah's publications, who is responsible for the estate of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. So he publishes these books, and he doesn't publish it because he wants to get money, but he publishes this work because it is time for the African youth to take control of our continent. So this book, the type of information which is in this book, it is so important that even if you had to pay $20 or $40 or $100, it is nothing compared to what you are getting from this book. So I encourage you, all the youth of the continent and the diaspora, to buy this book and read it. If you want to know how to get it, you can send me a message. You can put it down in the comment section, and I'll find a way, and with your contact, I'll find a way of reaching out to you and get this book to you for your understanding of what we are supposed to do as Africans in liberating the continent. So these books, they helped me to see the events around every period when Africa has been able to liberate themselves. And when I couple that together with Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order, How Nations Rise and How Nations Fall by Ray Dalio, I saw clearly that Africa is on the verge of change. So regardless of the challenges which we have today, regardless of the challenges which we have on the continent, when you are talking about the military bases which are on the continent, the police, our neo-colonial governments, regardless of all those challenges which we have as Africans, the time for unifying our continent and liberating it and doing the reconstruction, using the phases which Dr. Kwame Nkrumah said, for example, get independence, consolidate that independence, and then when you consolidate, then start the reconstruction process. Because the process of getting independence from the colonialists in 1949 up to 1957 by Nkrumah, and then on up to 1994 when South Africa got its independence. That was the period of getting political independence. But our independence was compromised a little bit. Okay, it was compromised a little bit in 1966 by the overthrow of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. So we did not get to consolidate that independence. So now we have to go back and fight again for that independence. But we have challenges which we have to encounter, which we have to deal with, just like the generations which went by, that they had their own challenges. So we also have challenges, but within the challenges also which we have as Africans, there is also opportunities, numerous opportunities which our ancestors did not have. We have access to numerous resources that our ancestors did not have. Communication, for example, we have more money than what they had. So there is no excuse for us not to carry out this struggle of liberating the continent. So, and then we have the challenge that the neo-colonial machine has been entrenched into the African systems. For example, the neo-colonial machine has been entrenched into the African systems in such a way that our African leaders, majority of them, like around 96% of them, now they serve the neo-colonial interests. And then they have the militaries, and then they have the police. But because we have more resources, we have access to more resources right now, then that means that we as a people also have the ability to deal with these challenges. So what we need is just to understand that the time is now, okay? The time is now for us to take back the continent, to take back our African continent. And then we have to sit together as a people, because we are more knowledgeable even now compared to, around 50 years ago, or when you were looking at 1945, or you were looking at 1791 when Toussaint Louverture and Dessalines, they conducted their revolution in Haiti, and they were able to defeat France, they were able to defeat Spain, they were able to defeat, even the United States to a certain extent, and they defeated Britain too. Okay, so but they did not have as much resources as we have. They did not have the communication systems like I can sit here and speak to 1,000 people. They did not have the money which we have and businesses which we had, but they were able to meet the challenge of the day, that they were able to meet the strongest militaries during that period. How did they do it? So it is up to us to look into this history and learn from it, and then also carry out our revolution on the African continent, because we have to take back our African continent if we want to rebuild it. That is the truth. That is the matter. That is the situation that we are facing. So these challenges, like in Haiti, they faced challenges. They faced the strongest militaries of the time. We also have this challenge that we are facing some of the neo-colonial militaries on the continent, together with the military bases of the United States and France and all these. But we have to deal with them. We have to understand that we have more resources to deal with these challenges. Within these challenges, there is opportunities. And so this is my analysis. This is what my analysis brings me to, that the book, Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order, which was published by Ray Dalio in 2011, last year in November, together with Nkrumah's book, Africa Must Unite, and Neocolonialism, the Last Stage of Imperialism, and another book which was written by C.A.R. James called The Black Jacobins. All these books put together, they point to one thing, that this moment is the moment for the liberation of our African continent. We have come up and we have started the work. Like I said, we have some petitions that are going around. One of the petitions, because this is how we start the work starts slowly. We have petitions that are going around. One of those petitions is that we are demanding for a united African state, okay, from the African heads of state and the African Union. Number two, we are demanding for a single currency and then a single passport for all Africans around the world. And when I'm talking about Africans, I'm talking about Africans on the continent, and those Africans are also in the diaspora. Number three, we are demanding for an end to these wars. So all these three petitions, I'll put them in the description down. You need to sign them, because these are the tools which we want to work on. Now, all these three petitions have been endorsed by the PLO Lumumba Foundation. Number one, they have been also endorsed, and the PLO Lumumba himself also has signed, because we are all constantly in contact with him. They have been endorsed by Dr. Susan, Pan-African Daily TV. They have been endorsed also, these petitions, by the Honorable, Joshua Maponga. They have also been endorsed by Dr. Edmund Folfak, who is a renowned oncologist in Ohio State University Medical Center. So we are calling to an end, to these wars on the continent. So there are three petitions. One, for the unification of the African continent. We are demanding for a single African state. Two, we are demanding for a single African passport and a single currency on the African continent. Three, we are demanding for an end to the wars on the continent, starting with the war that has been happening for a very long time, for many years in Cameroon. So this calls for establishment of a single African military, or a single high command, African high command with 1 million servicemen to protect the continent. And this follows the giving of deadlines for the expulsion or the removal of foreign military bases on the continent. So these are petitions which we are working on, and we need your help. We need you to circulate them around the continent and in the diaspora. When we are talking about Africans, we are talking about Africans with the understanding that all people of African descent are Africans and belong to the African nation. Like what Nkrumah said, that I'm not an African because Africa, because I was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in me. So if Africa was born in you, like how we have seen people in Jamaica, Barbados identify themselves even as African more than some of the people on the continent. So this is what Nkrumah meant by I'm an African, not because I was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in me. There's a lot of Africans out there. So we are saying that these petitions help us to move them all over the continent, so that they can reach some of the most powerful celebrities, people like Wody Meyer, people like Davido. We know Burna Boy is also a very big Pan-Africanist, okay? So people like that, they will help us, because we are looking for 1 million signatures for each of these petitions. For each of these petitions, we are looking for 1 million signatures, 1 million signatures. So if you are signing these petitions, I want to plead with you, sign the 3 of them. This is not for the good of me, but this is for the good of Africa. If you love Africa as a continent, then we have to work together. You have to come so that we can work together. And whatever is needed, whatever is necessary, we have to hold hands and work together. Why? Because this is the time for us to unify our continent and reconstruct it, like what Kwame Nkrumah said. Get independence, consolidate that independence, start the reconstruction process. Africa has not started the reconstruction process. That's why you see we don't have industries which are manufacturing vehicles, manufacturing planes, manufacturing trains, manufacturing the important gadgets which we need, manufacturing computers, manufacturing phones for us. All the things which we are doing, which we are using, are imported from outside. So we have not started the reconstruction process. And the independence itself was compromised. So now we have to fight again to get political independence. And then second, when we pull back and get the independence which was compromised, and then we have to consolidate it through unifying the continent, African unity. And when we finish unifying the continent, and then we start the reconstruction process. So that is what Nkrumah meant by get independence, consolidate that independence through African unity. African unity was a means for us to consolidate that independence so that our independence would not be compromised. So, and then the third is the reconstruction process, as we said. So now we have started the work. This work doesn't take one day, it doesn't take 1 month, it doesn't take 1 year, it doesn't take 2 years, but it takes a period. Okay, like I can give you examples that this work started. The work of decolonization by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah started from 1947, but it had started way back 1945 when they met in Manchester. You remember the 50th Pan-African Conference, which happened in Manchester. The 50th Pan-African Conference in Manchester happened in 1945. So until 1957, they had started the struggle. 1957, when they got independent, that was a period of 12 years. Now, Toussaint Louverture also started his struggle in Haiti in 1791 until 1804. So that took him 13 years. So this work doesn't take 1 day, 1 month, 1 week, 1 year. No, it takes a period of consistent, actions, consistent agitation, consistent, movement of people in a specific direction, in a defined direction. And then we'll be able to, I can guarantee you, rescue our continent from the exploitation that is going on, and then we'll be able to reconstruct it. My name is Kwame Gonza. I thank you very much. Like I said in the description, go down there and then get those petitions signed and share them with the 2 of your favorite contacts. 2 of your favorite contacts. We are not asking for much. We are asking for only 2 of your favorite contacts. Share these petitions and encourage them. When you share it with them, encourage them to do the same. I want to thank you. The channel is called Africa Reimagined. Subscribe if you are watching and you are not subscribed. Also share it with others. We have a lot of videos which we have published. Also check them out with different analysis about the events that are going on in the world, technology, how all these they affect the African continent. The war in Ukraine, we did an extensive analysis on that. The analysis we did, a presentation to the Consensusism class. That presentation is here. So what does the war in Ukraine mean for the African continent? What does these moves or the neo-colonial moves that are being made mean for the African continent? Like, for example, the recent trip of Joe Biden, the president of the United States, to Asia. What does that mean for the African continent? So all these, we put them in context. The technology, the rise of China, the decline of the West. What are the opportunities and threats for the African continent? So all these, we break them down on this channel called Africa Reimagined. We take the deep analysis and we break it down for you so that you can be able to understand where you fit in as a revolutionary and as an African majorly. Because when we talk about revolutionaries, people think that they are different from revolutionaries. As long as you wish for Africa to be better than what it is today, as long as you wish for Africa to be in the position, occupy the position of, of a fully developed continent, then you are a revolutionary, you are a Pan-African in that sense, if I may say. So my name is Kwame Gonza. The channel is called Africa Reimagined. I want to thank you all for watching and share the channel with others so that they can also get to understand that we are in abnormal times, we are in special times, we are not in normal times, but rather we are in revolutionary times, and we should work together as Africans with different organizations, Connect Africa, Kwame Nkrumah Ideological Institute, Global African Congress, EFL, Economic Fighters League of Ghana, EFF in South Africa, Economic Freedom Fighters. So all these organizations, we should work with other governments which are progressive, that are Pan-African in nature. So all these, we are trying to bring together these forces, but we need everyone. We need hands on the deck. We need everyone whose hands to be on top of the deck so that we can work together, because this Africa is not a small continent. Africa is a very huge continent with more than 1.7 billion people if you combine those on the continent and those on the outside. So it is not a task that can be accomplished by one person. We can only work together as a people. If we come together, then we can be able to accomplish this task. So I want to thank you once again. My name is Kwame Gonza. The channel is Africa Reimagined. Peace, and see you later. Thank you very much.